Did you notice something interesting here? If we zoom in, we can see that the frontman during the 2015 Squid Game had the number 132. That number wasn't chosen by accident, it's tied to a phenomenal detail that references the Bible. If you're wondering what exactly that means, today I've analyzed the finale of Squid Game to break down every hidden detail you might have missed. Episode 1 of Season 3 begins with the execution of the rebels. This time, we see the elimination of player 246, the father of a sick little girl, from a different perspective. It turns out he was shot on purpose in a way that allowed him to survive. That means the theory from Season 2 turned out to be true. Back then, we briefly saw the pink soldier from North Korea slightly lower her weapon, making sure not to hit any vital organs. Her plan was to help 246 escape by getting involved with the group that illegally harvests organs from players. The camera cuts to the player's hall. We see the Red Guards carrying in a coffin, with Gi-hun still alive inside. Let's pause here. A living man inside a coffin carries a much deeper meaning. It symbolizes death while still alive. Gi-hun may be breathing, but inside, he's dead. He feels like he's failed completely and has lost all will to live, which we clearly see in the way he just sits in silence, barely speaking throughout the entire season. The frontman played him like a fiddle, using this image of a living corpse in a coffin to drive home just how deeply he's lost. In this shot, we see the same diorama that appeared back in Season 1. Frontman receives a call from Captain Park, who turns out to be a fraud. His mission is to lead the inspector astray, making sure he never finds the island. But then he asks the frontman, "What should I do if the plan fails?" To which the frontman coldly replies, "Kill everyone, including the inspector." That one line completely flips the motivations of the main villain. After all, he once saved his brother, and it seemed like he truly wanted to keep him away from the island. So what changed? Why is he now willing to let him die? What's really going on inside his head? And what's his hidden plan? I don't know. The show never gives us a clear answer. Here, for the first time, we see the production crew behind the visual side of this brutal spectacle. They're monitoring the cameras and managing the board with all the participants, but interestingly, a few of the cameras show no signal. That's because in the previous season, the rebels destroyed them. The circle group mocks Gi-hun. Everyone claps sarcastically, except for this one guy. He's the only one not laughing at the main character. This shows that not everyone in their group is purely vengeful. There are still a lot of contradictions among them. Maybe he feels guilty, or maybe he just didn't hear the director say clap. Noel walks down to the operating room with player 246. Let's pause here. At this moment, we can spot this board in the background. It's a bit blurry, but I managed to make out some of it. It appears to be a log of the organs they've harvested. We see labels like LT for liver, CR for cornea, and even 2/0, which likely means 2 usable organs. 0 rejected, just a small random detail. On the doctor's mask, we can clearly see the word Yuhan. It refers to Yuhan Corporation, one of the largest and oldest pharmaceutical companies in South Korea, and from that, I came up with a theory. Yuhan is a pharmaceutical giant that's been around for almost 100 years, which means they likely have a lot of money. You know who else has a lot of money? The VIPs. Mysterious, ultra-wealthy corporate figures. They're the ones largely funding the event. Squid Game operates on a massive scale. Huge sets, food for nearly 500 players, advanced tech infrastructure, and most of all, an insanely high cash prize. Only the richest people in the country could afford something like that, and Yuhan just so happens to be one of the wealthiest corporations in South Korea. They could very well have some connection to Squid Game, and it's even possible that one of the VIPs is their representative. This drink is real. It's called Shamisul. It's also one of the most popular soju brands in South Korea. Now the players are getting just 2 potatoes for their meal. Back in Season 2, they were given a full, proper lunchbox. Their food rations have clearly been reduced as punishment for the rebellion sparked by Gi-hun. The first game begins a deadly version of hide and seek. The players enter a bright yellow room through a very unusual door. Take a closer look. The doorway is shaped like a dagger. If they had been observant enough, they might have guessed in advance that daggers would be part of the challenge. But there's more. The dagger shape carries a deeper meaning. It's a reference to the sword of Damocles, a metaphor from ancient Greece symbolizing a constant hidden threat that looms over those who hold power. The next game begins. The players are split into 2 teams. The red team is armed with daggers. Their goal is to hunt down and kill the blue team. The blue team's task is to hide from the reds while trying to find an exit from the map. That map is inspired by a famous painting, The Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh. In fact, episode 2 is titled The Starry Night as a direct reference to that iconic artwork. The glowing night sky from the painting has been recreated on the arena's ceiling, but that's not all. The walls are covered in childlike drawings and graffiti. Here, you can see a skull with the phrase, "Look at this stupid skull," written next to it. And over here, a doodle referencing Cheolsu and Yonghui. Those 2 names have been used in Korean schoolbooks since the 1960s, and over time, they became a kind of meme symbolizing ordinary kids. In Squid Game, those are the names of the robot girl from the red light, green light game, and her male counterpart introduced in Season 3. So in a way, these drawings foreshadow what's coming. The players are about to meet the second doll. The game begins. The blue team runs off in all directions looking for a place to hide. I'm sorry, but this guy is a complete idiot. He didn't even bother to close the door behind him. That's basically the same as leaving a giant sign on the wall that says, "I'm in here." Junhee suddenly goes into labor. Her team is forced to help her through it. The birth is successful, and the grandmother uses her hidden blade to cut the umbilical cord. In that moment, she's symbolically giving life, but just moments later, that same blade is used to take life. As she kills her own son, first she brings a newborn into the world. Then she takes a life out of it. What a powerful detail. Meanwhile, player 120 manages to take out a few enemies, but in the end, she's stabbed in the back and killed. Gi-hun eliminates player 388, and the witch manages to find the exit. Let's pause here. On the door, we see bloody handprints, or at least they look like fresh blood. This isn't just some random child's mural. It's a warning. Finding the door doesn't mean you're safe. You need 3 keys to actually unlock it, and those handprints, they suggest how many people made it here too early and died anyway. They found the way out, but not the way to escape. On the wall behind player 333, we see the phrase, "Beware of people." A simple but chilling message. Right next to it, there's a painted house, and its windows are colored like all 6 Infinity Stones. This is a clear reference to Thanos. Not just the one from Marvel, but also a nickname used for one of the Squid Game participants. And it doesn't stop there. At that exact moment, player 124 takes a pill and says, "Let's erase half the universe." Another direct nod to Thanos in Infinity War, when he snapped his fingers and wiped out half of all living beings. The witch teams up with player 100. Together they manage to find the exit, but 100 betrays her, leaving her behind in the maze. In a fit of rage, she curses him, saying he'll die by breaking his spine. What's most interesting is that this is the only one of her prophecies that actually comes true. Player 100 dies in the finale, falling from a great height, and just as she said, he breaks his back. In the end, a few of the characters manage to survive, and for the first time ever, we see the VIPs without their masks. During their conversation, a few interesting names come up. They mention Yogi Bear, the cartoon bear, who by the way was originally created as a satire of greed, which fits perfectly with the Circle players, known for their selfishness. They also reference Wonder Woman, the iconic superhero from DC Comics. Later they bring up Invincible, the brutally powerful hero from the comics by Robert Kirkman.
He's invincible!
Between games, a vote is held, but it doesn't stop the event. The grandmother tries to talk some sense into Gi-hun, while at the same time, the inspector finally locates the island. The very same one where he was shot before. The characters also managed to sneak into Captain Park's home. It turns out his last name is Jong-gil, the exact same name the frontman used back in season 2. His house is packed with hidden details. On the windows, we see the classic Squid Game symbols, triangles, circles, and squares. And if you pause right here, you'll spot a photo showing the captain and the frontman together, meaning they used to work together in the past. The old lady, overwhelmed with guilt after killing her own son, takes her own life. Meanwhile, Noeul continues helping player 246 escape from the island, and the new game begins. This time, it's a brutal version of jump rope over a massive chasm. On the map, we see Cheolsu and Young-hee, the doll siblings I mentioned earlier. The player's goal is to cross a railway track suspended over the abyss. There's even a traffic signal showing red and green lights, a clear callback to the very first game. But there's one major problem. Player 222 is carrying a child and has a broken ankle. Gi-hun decides to take on the challenge and tries to help her across, but he doesn't get the chance to return for her, because one guy comes up with a plan to make more money by pushing other players off the edge one by one. Gi-hun stops him, but loses so much time in the process that he fails to save 222, who falls to her death. After that, the small child she was protecting takes her place and becomes an official participant in the games. The players return to their beds. We notice that the room has changed slightly. On the walls, there's now a Latin phrase, Hodi mihi krastibi. Roughly translated, it means, today I die, tomorrow it's your turn. In the context of Squid Games, it's a grim reminder that even if you survive today's game, you might not make it through tomorrow. The Last Supper begins for most of the remaining players. Let's pause for a moment. This time, the tables are arranged in a circle. Back in season 1, they were arranged in a triangle. Now all that's missing is a square. On the boat, the inspector finally figures out Captain Park and takes him out. Meanwhile, the frontman reveals his identity to Gi-hun and offers him a dagger to kill his enemies in their sleep. Back in 2015, the frontman was given the exact same offer. And unlike Gi-hun, he gave in to the temptation and won the game by murdering his fellow players while they slept. We even see a flashback to that moment. Let's pause here. There are two really interesting details worth pointing out. This guy right here, he's the same man we saw back in season 1 when the inspector was flipping through the archive, player 129. But the second detail is way more fascinating. At the beginning, I mentioned that the frontman's number during the games was 132-, and it might carry a deeper meaning. Psalm 132 in the Bible speaks of a promise God made to David, a covenant that his descendants would forever sit on the throne. David made a vow to God, just like the frontman made a vow to player 001. In 2015, player 132 didn't die. He was chosen, pulled into the system, elevated above the rest, but only to oversee the suffering of others. What an incredible detail. In this shot, we see a security camera that strongly resembles the one from Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey. Noeul manages to sneak into the frontman's room, where she ends up fighting the man in black and wins. Let's slow this down for a second. Take a look. She positions his body right at the entrance of the elevator. That's actually a tactical move, because the corpse will block the door, preventing anyone from calling the elevator from below. It's a great detail, a reminder that the creators haven't forgotten her military background. But anyway, the final round of Squid Game begins. Once again, it's the Squid Game itself, but this time the players are forced to decide who should die. To complete the task, they have to select 3 people for elimination. What makes this even more disturbing is that one of the remaining players is a child. On the wall, there's a sign that reads, "Safety first." How ironic. The players argue with each other for about 3 hours. Then player 100 comes up with an idea. They'll each pull a strip from a shirt, and whoever draws the shortest one loses. But when the loser falls, we get a shot that reveals something interesting. All the straws were actually the same length. Classic 100. always scheming. Only 3 remain on the arena. Player 456, player 333, and the child. 333 refuses to lose, which leads to a fight. One that ends with both of them hanging over the edge of a deadly drop. 333 falls to his death, but there's a catch. They never press the button that starts the round. Now, 456 faces a terrible dilemma. He must either take his own life or throw the child off the platform. He chooses the first option, sacrificing himself. Just before he dies, he says these words.
우리 말이 아니야. 사람이야. 사람은
Through his actions, he proved that the frontman's philosophy, that people are inherently selfish, was wrong. He showed that goodness can still exist, even in the most hopeless of circumstances. But this ending also serves as a reminder. While Gi-hun proved that there's still some light in humanity, we must not forget the horrors people have committed. The very same horrors that were shown throughout the entire series. Human beings aren't collectively good or evil. They simply are. So what are we really? What does it mean to be human? That's a hard question to answer, and it seems that even Gi-hun didn't fully know the answer himself. Throughout the games, he saw it all. Greed, cowardice, lies, sadism, but also kindness, empathy, and selflessness. His final words will no doubt leave the frontman with a lot to think about, and maybe, just maybe, we'll see that reflection unfold in the next season of Squid Game. It all ties back to their earlier conversation in the limousine, where the frontman said, the games are just like betting on horse races, except this time, the horses are people. The inspector manages to find the island, and honestly, nothing comes of it. He just says, why? Amazing. Give this man a medal, the Smile Order or something. Anyway, the frontman blows everything up, and we jump forward a few months to Los Angeles. There, the antagonist visits Gi-hun's daughter and hands her the money left by her father. I'm not sure, but I think that his plan is give her some clues about games, and maybe in the future she will join Squid Game UK. As he drives through the streets of an American city, he spots a very familiar looking game, and the recruiter, none other than Cate Blanchett. It's clearly teasing a new season or spin-off set in the US. Reportedly, David Fincher will direct. And right here, we see an ad for scratch cards the same kind salesman was offering to homeless people at the beginning of season 2. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss my next film breakdowns.